Jack teaches Alice without ever really even saying a word.
Yeah.
And that I learned from you.
If we don't cut this.
Why would we cut this? Let me love you, Allie Hazelwood.
No. It should be less classy.
I mean, I did what I could.
And it was perfect.
You don't get to have questions answered.
I will
think they're
defend
money.
Alice until the day I die. Hi, I am Ali Hazelwood, and I am here with Sarah MacLean, whose new book, This Summer Storms, is coming out July 8th. It's your contemporary debut.
It is. I know. It took me 20 books to feel like I wanted to even try. Like, it's terrifying writing contemporaries.
Is it though?
Yes. You people have cell phones and computers, and miscommunication is very difficult. So I had to put all my characters on an island and take away Wi-Fi.
But they are basically a cell phone family, as in, let's go back a little bit. Let's backtrack. Tell us about the book.
So These Summer Storms is the story of a very dysfunctional, extremely wealthy family.
I don't think they're that bad. As someone who comes from an Italian
They're
family,
pretty bad, everyone.
you know what? I've seen worse, I have to say.
Well, it's funny because you come from an Italian family and so do I, and there are definitely some, I mean, not to find a point on it, but like some of this stuff is ripped from the headlines of my family.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But the father, the patriarch of this family, is essentially a billionaire tech guy who invented essentially the cell phone. And when he dies and the billions are all on the line, all the children are summoned home to their private island off the coast of Rhode Island, which is where I grew up. And they arrive home to discover that there is an inheritance game afoot, and he's left them all a particular task that they have to complete in order to activate the inheritance. And it's all under the watchful eye of Jack Dean. Who I wrote for Allie.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really needed my very own Jack Dean, and I am very grateful.
Well, you're welcome.
So we have a main character, even though the book is actually very interesting because we see the point of view of every single one of the siblings. But we have a main character that we follow, who is Alice, and I love her so much.
Thank you.
She's just very relatable, but also messy, but also I understand everything that, like, I really understand where she's coming from. What was it like to write a contemporary main character versus, a historical?
It's really interesting because I really did struggle with the contemporary of it all. And I think part of it is because world building exists in contemporaries too, and research exists in the world, and I had to really think through what does it look like to write a contemporary. But Alice was really clear to me from the beginning because I knew I wanted to write about a dysfunctional family. I knew I wanted it to be about wealth and power and the things that wealth and power do to people and how they build us and break us. And I knew I wanted it to be about what happens to a family in the wake of this kind of like power vacuum. But Alice was always exiled, right? The story behind Alice is that she is the third of 4 children, and she, 5 years ago, we come to discover right away that she hasn't been home for 5 years. She hasn't been welcome in the family for 5 years. And 5 years ago, she was exiled from the family by their father, who just sort of decreed it like a king. So writing Alice was really great in the sense that it felt I could give her a life that was familiar in a lot of ways to me, right? Like she lives in Brooklyn, she's, a teacher, she has, great friends in New York City, which is very different than writing the historical heroines who are all like, exceptional in their own historical way, but then also bring her home to this place where she is both inside and outside.
She is very much, I would say, the middle child because she's the middle sister. And it's actually really interesting to see her in the story from the point of view of her siblings because, she could be, and she's a little bit of an unreliable narrator sometimes, but then you kind of start seeing her from the point of view of, Greta, her eldest sister, and they talk of her as the the bad child or the child who doesn't care, the one who doesn't need anyone else. And it's just so interesting to see the difference between the way she thinks of herself and the way others think of her. It's very interesting to me that she's a middle child. I feel like middle children are...
Are we getting into it? Are you a middle child?
No, I am my youngest
Me too.
daughter, but I have had experience with middle children, and I think they have it the hardest, honestly.
I think so too. I mean, identity becomes it. You're neither, beast nor fowl. And in this family especially, right? Like everyone plays a very clear role. Yep. And those roles have been, and I don't think this is special to wealthy families or even frankly like severely dysfunctional ones. I think all families are dysfunctional in their own way, to borrow
some more than others.
To borrow from Tolstoy. But this idea that, there's the child, the perfect child, the one who is always expected to be there, to be the shadow and the helper. And
which would be Greta.
That's Greta, that's the oldest. And then there's, the boy king, who everybody just expects that Sam is going to succeed Franklin in the family, in the business, in everything. And he's sort of a mess in his own right because of that. And then there's Emily, the youngest, who's like, the delightful ingenue who, everybody loves because it's almost like all the mistakes that were made before have now been rectified in Emily. And then Alice is sort of in the middle, floating.
She works really hard to find her own identity that is separate from her father. We never see Franklin on screen, on page. No. We only see him through the eyes of other people. It's so interesting how, on the one hand, I feel like he's such an important character, but I don't feel like I have a grasp on him, and that is just because everyone has a different opinion on him. Everyone's seen, his wife has, Elizabeth, has her own idea of what her husband is like, and then their children have their own ideas. What was it like to write probably the main character, but also honoring the fact that people are gonna have very different perspectives on him?
Full disclosure, I lost my father a few years before I started thinking about storms. And one of the things that I think when you lose somebody who is that powerful in your life, you realize almost immediately how many questions you had that you never asked, and how many things you wish you could know that you will never be able to know. And so for me, and then as I spoke to other people who had also lost people from their family, or people who were very close to them, I realized it's such a powerful piece of loss that we don't talk about that much, but there are so many secrets in this family, right? There are so many things that they will never understand about their father. Why he did the things he did, why he did the things he did right up to a week after his death, right? Because the whole book, the book exists in 1 week after Franklin's death. And so for me, I agree with you. I didn't put Franklin on page, and that was intentional. It was a conversation that I had with my editor, my agent. I mean, we all talked about, should Franklin be on page? And ultimately for me, it felt like, well, no, because if I put Franklin on page, then readers are able to have questions answered. And you don't get to have questions answered at the end. You have to learn how to build yourself fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
it's new growth,
and it's what happens with grief. It's that makes total sense to me, as a choice, as a narrative choice.
But also, and you're a sibling. I was watching something the other day. Something on the internet. I was endless scrolling.
Doom scrolling.
And somebody said, I stumbled on this video, and somebody was saying how even if you grow up in the same family, you have different parents.
Oh yeah.
And every child has different parents. And so for me, that was really important too, to show this. I mean, this is really the story of this family, and they all have a different father.
Totally. And like you said, there is, Franklin is a mystery, but even the things that people know, you don't tell us immediately in the book. So for example, we know that Alice was exiled, but we don't know why. There are hints, but we don't know exactly why until maybe halfway through the book. And we know that there is something going on with Greta, but we don't really get what has happened in the past. So there is an element of mystery here. Was that intentional, or did you just end up writing a mystery?
No.
Like, oh my God.
Oh, hello.
Look at me, writing things.
So ultimately, the sort of big mystery when I sat down and thought of this family and knew I was writing about these billions and what would happen to this inheritance, my initial thought was, well, the mystery is going to be what happens to the inheritance. The problem is, Allie, maybe you've noticed this, then you have to actually write a book. And stuff has to happen in the book.
So I
then
just
you're
don't
like,
understand why.
Every character in this book needs to be here for a reason. And you end up in a situation where, for me, it felt like everybody, this island, the setting is a character. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever written a book where there isn't a kind of really big set piece. And so for me, the island was also a character.
Does the island exist? Like, are there similar islands?
There are, yeah. When they're in Rhode Island, so Rhode Island is a tiny little state, but it's split by a very large body of water. And in the bay, there are private islands, all dotted throughout this bay. And
How
some
does
of them have
one
private.
buy an island?
I don't know. We should do it. We should check.
How many hundreds of dollars do you think is it going to cost us?
I mean,
to
it
buy?
couldn't cost more than $1,500.
Perfect. We will. Yes, I have it in my pocket. We can just do this.
So but a lot of these islands are private and have been private so some of them were bought by the state, some of them are state parks, some of them are just private, like land reserves, and then some of them have houses on them.
Yeah.
And that must be amazing to own your own island.
Couldn't relate. But what about the house, the manor? Like, is that something? Was there an inspiration? Because you talk about the architecture of it. You give it a history. You describe.
I mean, Rhode Island is full of these houses, right? These like.
I've never been. I actually really want to go
Well,
now.
can we go? Will you come with me?
Okay. Bye, everyone.
I want to take you to Rhode Island.
I want to go too.
Well, you may have heard of a singer named Taylor Swift.
Okay, I was gonna go there. Like, I was gonna be, it's the last great American dynasty. I was gonna go there.
So Taylor Swift, everybody, I mean, the Swifties in the crowd will know this, but Taylor Swift bought a house on the coast in Rhode Island. And
Rebecca Harkness's house.
Rebecca Harkness.
God, why do I know
Look
so
at
much
you.
about this?
No, this is great. But
I
Rebecca
need a life.
Harkness was one of the wealthiest. She was a Harkness of one of the wealthiest families in Rhode Island. She had this stunning house. This house before Taylor bought it was the most expensive home in the state of Rhode Island, and people knew about this house. They knew about this family, and she's just one of dozens of old families that have these kind of big sprawling houses in Rhode Island. All of them beach cottages. And, country house, tiny little.
Yeah, little huts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so for me, it felt like Rhode Island, Newport has this rich history of like where all the robber barons from the Gilded Age had their country houses and their summer cottages. It's very difficult to look at the world right now and not say, oh, we're in a new age of robber barons. So what if Rhode Island this house is obviously the home of a modern day robber baron, right? I mean, he is. He's a million pieces from a million different tech billionaires today.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it like? So you wrote maybe the richest man in the world. I think maybe Uncle Mike is richer, but then he got a divorce.
I mean, it's a lot of very wealthy
yes,
people.
but yeah, he's one of the
floating
richest.
around.
We're talking about like the Secret Service having to come and do sweeps before the funeral celebration. So this is an incredibly wealthy person. When you write historicals, you write, the aristocracy, right? But there is there are ethical considerations in both cases.
Yeah, well, for what it's worth, I wrote this book before, well, not before, but before we had really like a name and a face of like the worst of billionaires.
I don't know who you're referring to.
And so, no, there are ethical considerations, especially when you're writing a book about billionaires and you, like me, believe billionaires shouldn't exist.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So, what will happen?
Exactly.
But also, listen, the reality is that $1 billion it's shorthand. right? It's shorthand
I
for
agree.
a life, an environment, a group of, a community, I mean, such as it is, community, right? Wealth.
Aesthetic.
You don't have to have, you know, however many figures in your bank account in order for you to experience this kind of
Totally. I agree, and I feel like there's a lot of
twisted.
discourse in billionaire romance that doesn't quite grasp the fact that we're not really talking about billionaires. So we're talking about.
I mean, he's a duke. He's a, you know, it's,
Yeah.
he's a vampire king. He's a.
Exactly.
We're getting back to romance.
Yes. Was there any difference when writing, you know, an aristocrat or, I don't know, the owner of a gambling hell?
So now you're getting into the Jack of it all, right? Because it feels like Franklin, the billionaire, and the Storms themselves, these are not heroic people.
I think Alice is.
Oh, well, I mean, hopefully,
Yes.
right?
Alice.
I think some of the Storms,
I will
think they're
defend
money.
Alice until the day I die. I also think Emily.
Listen, I think there's something. Thank you. Like, I think there's the hope is that you walk away from this sort of feeling weird
Yes.
about it. You're like, I simultaneously think this is an excessive kind of gross lifestyle, but also can see that there's something sympathetic to hopefully all of them in some way, right? I have my own feelings about who is the worst character in the book, and I hope even she is a sort of, you know, sympathetic character in the end. But yes.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so is these summer storms a romance?
I think that I personally think that it is a romance, but I think that I'm a reader first and always, you know that. And if somebody handed me this book and said, here's a book by Lisa Kleypas, right? It is a romance. And then I read this as a romance reader, I would be like, no, this is not a romance. Because it's a MacLean novel, right? Jack Dean is gonna get it done on page. It's gonna be great. And at the end, there is going to be a happily ever after. However,
Or a happy for now.
or I mean, sure, whatever you want to call it. For me, in my mind, it's a happily ever after, and I wrote it. So.
I need the newsletter exclusive or the paperback exclusive.
Well, we could talk about that too. What happens at the beginning? We should talk about Jack and Alice. The through line of this book is a romance, but it's also a book about this big family.
Yes.
And so it's almost like if you loved the show Succession or you loved the movie Knives Out.
Oh my
and
God.
you just really wished people banged more.
This is amazing because I feel like we had talked about the book before and it was always Succession, the comp. But while I was reading it, I was like, this is actually giving me more Knives Out vibes.
Right, it's New England.
Yeah, and also just the fact that Succession does not have a single likable character. Like, I am a Shiv apologist and I will like die for Shiv, but no one is a good person.
No,
there.
every episode you sort of root for somebody different, and it's just like the person you hate least.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, these people are really not doing well, but like.
But it's so great. If you haven't seen Succession.
Oh yeah, no, Succession
see
is
Succession.
the best show on TV. I usually really need someone to enjoy a show, but with Succession,
No.
I was just fascinated by
Good writing can get you anywhere.
Yeah, and like so many clips are so relevant for what the world is like
Yes.
right now. I'm like, oh wow, that was so
prescient.
Yes, absolutely. But I would argue that in these summer storms there are like actually characters that you can hold on to and that you can, you know, be like, I actually want this person to get everything that they deserve in a good way. That's why I would
That's
say
sort of romance, right? I mean,
Totally.
you do this too in your books when you have like, I mean, at the end of an Allie Hazelwood book, the world is slightly better than it was before.
Totally.
And I think that's the heartbeat of romance now, even more than it ever was when I started reading romance, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to end storms with like, and I don't know what to tell you, rich people are terrible.
Exactly.
You know, I wanted it to feel like the world was slightly better.
Yeah, and that is why I think it felt more like Knives Out to me, because in Knives Out, you know, at the end of the movie you're like, good.
This all worked out.
Good for them. Like, it's great. For me, it is I'm gonna tell you it's a romance, or maybe it's not the right way of phrasing it. I would recommend it to my friends who love romance.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. But also like family sagas.
Yeah.
But also if someone is like, I'm looking for a romance and, I want it to be about grief and I want it to be about a hot fixer, I would 1000% to be like, The Summer Storms. Yes.
Well, that's good.
Tell us about the hot fixer, by the way.
The hot fixer. Well, here's the thing. So this inheritance game has been teed up for the whole family, and no one knows that until they get to the island. The problem is that they have to get to the island, and so Alice is having a tough day when this book opens. Her dad has just died. Her relationship is in shambles. She's going home to this island, to this family that she has been exiled from, and the whole world is talking about her father. And she gets onto the train. I take the train home to Rhode Island every time I go. And this very attractive man sits next to her. And she thinks what I think a lot of us would think, which is everything is going to change tomorrow. My whole life has been upended. What if, in this one moment, I just threw caution to the wind and had a one-night stand with this hot man on the train.
And banged the guy who sat next to me.
And wouldn't you know, he just happens to be the guy running the inheritance game. That's normal. That's how it goes.
That is romance logic. I have to say, after the first couple of chapters, I was so attached to him. We don't even know his name at the
No,
beginning.
she's very clear.
She's like...
Because she's sort of a recognizable name.
Exactly. And I was very attached to him, and I was like, if this guy doesn't appear on the island, I am done. This is a romance. That's what I need.
You know what's so funny? I gave it to somebody who is not a romance reader. Somebody's a friend of mine who does not read romance, and she was so surprised. And I was like, how? Why would I have done this to you? She was like, oh, I just thought she had a one-night stand. Good for her. And I was like, yes, good for her, but also...
real world logic.
Oh. And then she was like, does this happen a lot? I loved it. And I was like, welcome to romance. The water is fine.
I mean, everyone knows that if you have a one-night stand, the following day, the guy is going to be your new boss. Everyone knows that is how it works.
My daughter is 11 years old, and so we talk... she knows what I do. There are romance novels all over the house. We are, a Pride and Prejudice loving family. And she was like, Mom, can I read your book? And I was like, sure. And she read the first page. And you literally see Jack on the first or second page of the book, though you don't know that he is Jack. And she pointed to it. She said, this guy, is that the hero? And I was like, my baby has learned so well.
When she said a tall guy was with a stern face, I was like, this better be the one. But I'm attached.
He's just a man on a train platform, everyone.
He is my future husband.
Romance
I don't care.
is so easy.
Well, it's a shorthand, I would say.
It is.
Just like Billionaires, a shorthand, tall, stern guy is
handsome.
Romance hero. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, so...
But that was actually the most fun about writing contemporary, is I really loved writing a kind of the breathless, emotional, I think kind of historical-esque romance in this world. No, Joanna Shoup likes to say, no Sarah MacLean hero escapes a book without punching someone in the face. That remains true.
In multiple times. In this one, so
yeah, it was a very fun. I think there's a lot of MacLean in this book.
Yeah, and it makes total sense. And like you said, the setting does feel a little bit like it's outside of space and time. In the sense that, again, they are on this island and it's a week. And yes, of course, there are phones and the money was made through tablets and phones and technology. But at the same time, really, it's a forced proximity situation. Because what Alice has to do is stay on the island, which feels easy, but it's not easy at all for her. And especially because Jack is there. And it's really, like you said, this is very much this is not a book that I would say falls under one single genre. It's not just a romance.
Right.
But at the same time, there are a lot of little romance tropes that you put in, such as there was only one bed, which it's a slightly, a slightly different take on it. What was it like to just kind of take the best of, our genre and experiment?
I think when I came into writing this book, I was like, everybody had said to me, you are not writing romance. And so I was like, I'm not writing romance. But then I was really I fought it for a while, but then I realized about, I don't know, halfway through that I will never not write a romance.
Maybe the romance writes you. Maybe that is what happened.
Yeah, like I just think, Jane Ann Krentz talks about core story so much, and we talk about that in romance, right? Like, I mean, I could tell you what an Allie Hazelwood core story, like, I could tell you what an Allie Hazelwood book will be. You can tell me what a Sarah MacLean book will be, or at least like how it will come to, like the vibe of it, right? But I think writing something and intending for it to be sort of different in some way made me realize that my core story actually is romance.
You said people were telling you that you weren't writing romance?
Yeah, because it is a big family saga. It's sort of,
Okay.
keep it classy, MacLean, it's hardcover,
Counterpoint. Hardcover is more expensive. There is more space on the page. It should be less classy. It should be more full of filth. Like, what are we?
I mean, I did what I could.
We as an yes, and it was perfect. We as an industry should just like the bigger the edition, the more the filth. I think that's what it should be.
I love that. I love that.
How did you get the idea? Like, was Succession part of the inspiration, or is it more of a like just parallel thing?
I think it was a few things. It was the pandemic, and I was in Rhode Island.
Oh, it was. So it started during the pandemic.
I've been sort of thinking about this book for about 6 years, and I guess 5 years. And a friend of mine had a cottage on the beach in Rhode Island. And this is not.
Is it a cottage
no,
or?
This is not like a Taylor Swift cottage. This is like a just beautiful like 2-room beach cottage. And she rents it every summer. And Rhode Island passed this law during the pandemic that like people couldn't come to Rhode Island. You had to be a Rhode Islander. And so like you, because they were worried about COVID.
Right, yeah.
And so nobody was allowed to Airbnb or like rent. And so she was like, well, I have this. Would you like it? And we were in our tiny apartment in Brooklyn just wanting to kill ourselves and each other. And so we went, and some people got it really into sourdough at the beginning of the pandemic. I got really into these islands in the bay.
Do you sail? There's a lot of sailing.
I do not sail, but I have been. When you grow up in Rhode Island, you grow up kind of around boats.
Okay.
So there's a lot of sailing.
There is a lot of sailing, and
like sailing is a vibe.
Oh,
like
yeah.
There are two different kinds of There are two different kinds of boaters, right, in Rhode Island. There are the people who grow up around the water, like on the water, and they have a boat and they use it like as a car. Boating to the clam shack to pick up their dinner, or to the grocery store, or to whatever. And then there are people who like sail.
Yeah. I mean,
and are members of clubs.
Yeah. So sailing is a thing that kind of Alice and Jack have in common. When they talk about it, I'm like, I'm sure this is English, but I don't know what is happening. But there is a lot of like kind of competence porn in a way.
Yes, Jack is
really good at it, but also Alice is good.
I love a hero who is skilled.
Exactly.
Has a surprise skill.
And knows how to stop a boat, which I didn't even know was a difficult thing.
You can't stop a sailboat.
I didn't even know that.
Because you can't turn off wind.
That makes total sense.
I mean, you can stop a sailboat, but you have to be pretty talented.
Yeah, and some are. What can I say?
Listen, the best thing about writing, as you know, is I need this person to be able to stop a sailboat on a dime. Look, he can.
And he can. Did you have to do research for the terms? They are literally talking about things like, I'm like, what is?
Yes, I have friends who grew up around sailboats. And so I checked everything. Okay. And then actually in a very funny moment here at Random House, I came to an early meeting, and someone walked into a room and was like, I'm a sailor and you really nailed the boating. And I was like, few because I have not been around,
I am not a sailor, but to me,
30-foot yawls.
yes, it felt like you had nailed it to
Well,
me.
thank you.
Okay, sorry. Well, let's go back.
It just has to feel right.
Right. That is what I tell my editor when she's like, I don't understand the science.
Well,
I was like,
have
but
you
does
ever-
it feel right?
Exactly. Well, you are a scientist, though, so it's different. But have you ever done research for something and you just end up putting like so much in the first draft?
And then yeah.
Like, you must have something that you just know way more about because of some book.
Oh, totally. Yes. I mean, for me, it was diving. Like, my editor was like, I think this is a little bit, like, I don't think we need the breakdown.
The bubbles.
I think it's okay. I'm like, I don't know. Whatever. Okay, so you said the first inspiration was Rhode Island and the pandemic.
Yeah. And then, of course, Succession was, I had seen Succession, and I love the idea of that, of like a big family and like the jockeying for position, for money. The family piece, like I said, I had lost my dad. And while this is not the story of my family, there is a power vacuum when you lose, a figurehead in a family. And the way families rebalance themselves was really was interesting to me. And also, it just felt like I left Rhode Island when I was 18, right? And I was like, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with this place. Like, it's small town. I want to move to New York. And I did. I did all of those things. And I think there was, in that moment, in that sort of pandemic-y moment, I had this real feeling of like wanting to write about that world. And so it was all of those things kind of mashing together. And I thought there was never a question in my mind that I was going to end up, that it was going to be contemporary, that it would be, right now.
What about the siblings relationship? Was that, like, you write them, there is something about siblings where
Yes.
they are, like, the way you can be nasty to your siblings.
Right, because they're always going to be there.
Exactly. Like, it is this sort of unconditional sort of love. Or maybe it's not unconditional, but like there is something about sibling dynamics, and they are ruthless with each other in the book. Like the things that they say to each other are like, oh my God, like you can't go back from this. And then literally 5 minutes later, they're playing cards and having fun. That was amazing.
I have siblings. It's like that. I don't think you can use love or loathing for your sibling.
It is. Yeah.
There's like a third term. I don't know what it is.
Let's make it up, right? And let's make fetch happen.
It's like German, maybe. There's like a German term for the love of, like there's some language has a third term, and that's what it is. And it is.
It's probably like this long.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, no, that makes total sense.
But it just, I don't trust anybody whose like best friend is their sibling. I'm like, that's not true. Like, I don't know what that's about. But I also sort of don't trust anybody who's like, no, we don't talk. Because what's that about? How? How do I get that?
How do I want to kick you out of my life. There is something about, being born and like being raised in the same family that, of course.
Yeah, you have, all the buttons are installed the same way.
And all the trauma is shared, which is kind of amazing.
But like, I have a question for you, because I feel like this is one of those situations where romance trained me in a lot of ways to think about, how you define that kind of emotion. And so could you talk a little bit about
No. No?
No, you're here. I get to ask.
No, I couldn't talk about anything. No, next question.
Can you talk about like feelings, Allie? Because I feel like you are so good at digging deep when it comes to heroines and their emotions.
I am pretending nothing just happened. And instead, I will ask you, did you take inspiration from anyone famous? From
Allie
Jack?
Hazelwood's
No.
Heroes who I took inspiration from.
Honestly, do you remember I texted you the other day and I was like, this is just, I love him. I love this man. I will marry this man. He's my husband. And you said he's a very Ali Hazelwood hero.
He
and I was
is.
like, I don't know if he is, but like he's mine now.
No, he is. Relentless competence.
He is very
Let me tell you all the ways that you write a hero.
Okay.
And now, I mean, it is true. Relentless competence, an unwillingness to compromise a heroine's safety or like security.
He is. There is something. It's so interesting the way you see Alice from, or you understand the relationship between Alice and her father through him. He is very much in the last 5 years. He's the one who was with Alice's father, and she isn't. She wasn't there.
Right.
So there are things about the way Alice's father felt about her that you can really only see through his eyes.
Yes.
And that is just fascinating to me. He kind of holds something. Alice is not very interested in the money.
No.
She is interested in her dad, though, and in the closure
Right.
that they never had.
They never had. And all the
And-
questions she'll never get answered.
Exactly. And Jack has this in his, he's the one who's the closest when it comes to like answers. So
So similar to Ali Hazelwood's heroes. I think, okay, but in all honesty, this is a real type, right?
Yeah,
in
totally.
in romance. And I think the promise of a hero like this is that he will, like I said, he will be relentlessly competent. He will have a ruthless commitment to the heroine's safety. And so, yes, of course, in my books, that means like he is not afraid to justifiably face punch a terrible person.
as one shouldn't be. Yes.
But in other books, in other forms of this hero, and I think for Jack and for many of your heroes, I would argue all of your heroes, there is that extends to a hero who is just so good at hearing what a heroine needs. The patience and the focus of these heroes is it's fantasy.
Yeah, 1000%.
In the most powerful, wonderful way, right? And so in many of your books, there is a kind of, because you do something interesting in your books because you rarely show us, you're like, stop. No, I won't stop. You do something really interesting because I thought about this a lot when I was writing Storms because Jack does not have a point of view.
Did you consider it, though, having a point of view of him?
I did.
Of his?
There is a version of this book where there is a one point of view chapter of
Do you have
Jack's. No. But you didn't.
it? Where is it?
But
what is the password to your computer?
Maybe I'll send it to you. It didn't work because it didn't work on a lot of levels. Sometimes things don't work.
Who said that?
I said that. I'm the boss.
Who are you even? Who gave you the authority over your book? Come on, how dare you?
Okay, but this is the thing, right? Is the way that works in a historical is very different than the way that works in a contemporary.
Yeah.
I thought a lot about you, and I thought about about other authors who I've seen. Kate Claiborne has done this too. Where he is so integral to her, ultimately realizing that she can love herself, right, and love who she has become. But it's not because he tells her that. It's because he sees her as she really is
And loves
understands her truth.
Yeah. Ooh.
And the only way, there's like a real magnificence in your books and in other people's books when that realization strikes like lightning for the heroine, right? Like Jack teaches Alice without ever really even saying a word.
Yeah.
And that I learned from you.
This is, if we don't cut this.
Why would we cut this? Let me love you, Ali Hazelwood.
No. Okay, so if someone reads These Summer Storms and loves it,
Thank you, first of all.
what books would you recommend to them?
Okay, so Renee Adia has a new book out called Park Avenue.
I haven't read it, but I just met her and I love her.
She's incredible. She wrote, you would really love, I don't know if you've read her, she has a YA series called The Wrath and the Dam that's like really lush and gorgeous and like about vampires, and it's great. But this is her first adult contemporary. It's about a very wealthy Korean family in New York City. They have a beauty empire, and they live on Park Avenue, and the heroine is not a part of that world. And then she gains access to it as their family lawyer. There's an inheritance. There's sort of an inheritance question in that book. You will love it. Renee is great, and it is where mine is Rhode Island, and like what happens among the siblings. Hers is New York City, and like what happens when an outsider is let into the inner sanctum. So that one. Alice Murphy has a book coming out called A Showgirl's Rules for Falling in Love, which is, it has this great, so the structure is, it's about a curvy vaudeville actress in the Gilded Age New York who has this like intense, scandalous love affair with a robber baron. And it's wrapped in this contemporary story about his great grandson who finds like an old-timey vaudeville photo of the showgirl and takes it to a researcher at the New York Historical Society. They write their story together. So like there's the outside contemporary romance and the inside historical, which will give you kind of, I think, a similar feel.
Okay, so now we've had Sarah MacLean historicalism, Sarah MacLean contemporary. What about?
Are you going to ask me for a paranormal?
Of course. You are an Immortals After Dark lover.
I am. Because it's great.
What have you been waiting
it's
for?
Amazing.
Yes, exactly. So,
I don't know. That feels hard.
I mean,
Yeah, it does.
not harder than historicals, though. Would you consider that?
I don't know. Maybe. I can
What
think.
if I moved into your house
and just told me what to write?
and wouldn't leave until you have written me a paranormal? Would you consider that then?
See, but I think that the world building of a paranormal, I feel like the magic of it all would be very difficult for me.
But on the other hand, I could see Jack as a vampire.
Yeah, well, of course you could, because he's a king. All heroes must be king.
I love that. Okay, well, fine. So if you are not going to promise that you're going to write me a paranormal, this is the end of our friendship.
End this conversation.
Wait, I want to see if there is something else that I wanted to ask. This is actually a very good craft question. What comes first to you in a story, like the story and the plot or the characters? I like to think that Alice sprung fully formed in your head.
Like Athena.
Exactly. From Zeus' head. And then she told you the plot. She whispered it in your ear. It was like, make me a Jack, please.
Make me a Jack.
That's what happened.
Well, that was never not going to be the case. It is often a character, one character, and then they're sort of alone, and then I figure out why they exist. And then it becomes, well, how does this character fit into this world? In this case, obviously, it was a little different because I was like, I want to write about these islands. I want to write like a big family story. But I feel like here it was really Alice. It was, this exiled daughter with so many questions.
I love to hear that.
Who just needs love. The love of a man with thighs the size of tree trunks.
For a second, I thought you were going to say the love of her father. And I was like, this is so fantastically Freudian or whatever. Any problem, but like, yes, absolutely. Okay, so this book is maybe not strictly a romance, maybe not only a romance, but still you are one of the biggest advocates for romance. You have the Fated Maid podcast, which is, it's just a staple for every romance reader. Why? No, okay, seriously. What is it like for you to advocate for romance, and why do you do that?
Romance is the greatest. All stories are made better by having romance in them. This is true.
It is.
Like, it's just.
I cannot. Yes.
I mean, in a world that is full of just mess, the best thing in the world is the straight shot of like two people who are also mess, really discovering that together they make something perfect.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's all I want. It's all I want from media. It's all I want from books. And so all I want to do is like press romance novels into people's hands. and say, go read this. It will make you happy.
I agree.
All right. I'm Sarah MacLean, the author of These Summer Storms. I'm here with my friend, Allie Hazelwood, and the author of the upcoming Problematic Summer Romance.
Sure.
I am so honored to have you in my life. And
I
thank
love
you for being here.
Thank you for getting me. Sarah MacLean got me coffee, guys. This is my life.